All right, hey, this is Colonel Leonas. This is my first podcast, kind of following the tradition that General Nestor had started, and it's a great way to communicate informally. Well, he had nasty time, and I'm obviously not going to steal that copyrighted segment of his podcast because he'll probably go professional with his podcasting skills. But we're going to do what's called Babble Time, and it's Babble, Babble Time. And the neat thing about Babble Time is there's a reason it's called Babble Time. I'm not going to disclose that. But each podcast I do, I'm going to put $25 on the table, and that $25 will add up until someone can actually figure out what Babble Time means and where it comes from. And it's basically centric on something about me that I don't think anyone knows. So there's $25 on the table. And
it sounds impossible, sir.
It's someone will eventually figure this out or do the research and figure out where Babble comes from.
How is that spelled?
Babble.
Okay.
There it is. So $25 on the table for whoever can find this out, and hopefully it will eventually get to a pot of money that is significant. People spend time figuring this out. We're going to do Babble Time. It's like B-A-B-B-A-B-A. Anyway, so right now we're in Babble Time. I'm just going to kind of talk about what's going on within the wing, specifically centric with this UTA. I know this is going to come out after the UTA, but we're having a comm survey. I think it's called the comm survey.
Yes.
Okay, and it's a survey to our wing members so that they can communicate to our CI2, our innovation event to fix communication within the wing. It's really easy to use. Colonel Leiter did it, and you said it's a QRC code.
That's correct.
And it goes through a couple questions. What took you about a minute to do?
Yep, probably about 2 to 3 minutes, but you can do it all right on your cellular device.
Okay, awesome. So that's going to be out there, and it's still going to be available. So if you're listening to this podcast after the UTA and want to participate in that survey, please do. We have a new LRS commander, which is the third new commander in the MSG. They're building a great team there. Colonel Bear, he's actually a prior enlisted member that became an officer and a commander, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later and how our wing is really good at producing those types of leaders. He has a very diverse background. He just came from the Pentagon. He was a guardsman, and he was in an airlift wing up at St. Joe. So he's kind of coming back home, but he has a lot of great ideas and really in tune with what the Air Force is talking about, and that's combat deployable wings. And right now, the only thing that makes us not a combat deployable wing is that we don't have porters. And he talks about, he came in the first thing he talked about and this was kind of all on his own, that he wanted to multi-capable airmen in the LRS to include porters, and I was like, genius. You and I were obviously mind meld before that, but that's something that the Air Force and specifically our wing is going to is combat deployable wings, and the only thing we're short on is porters. So he's already has some great initiatives there. As you know, the Air Force is going through a massive restructuring, and that will be announced officially mid-February at the AFA symposium, where our upper level command structure will go to something that mimics the Army, but what specifically will happen to us is we'll be identified as a combat deployable wing. And AFRIC is already initiating those changes, and we are one of the units that are perfect to transition to that combat deployable wing, specifically with that new LRS commander. It is happening so quick. Our NAF commander talked about this, and she said 3 days ago. So this is happening super, super quick, and by the time you come into the March UTA, these changes will already be announced. Very, very significant and massive changes coming our way really short order. We already talked about the NDAA being passed at the last UTA, and there was a lot of positive things when it came to our wing's future. There was a buyback of some F-15Es, 51 if I believe. They stopped divesting F-16s. There was some money thrown at the F-15EX program. There's no change to our program of record, which is a question mark, but what I would say the most significant thing attached to that NDAA is the Fighter Force Preservation Act that is requiring the Air Force to produce a report to Congress that outlines a plan for long-term Air Force fighter structure. It will include procurement, divestment, unit activation, deactivation, or remissioning plans or actions by fiscal year through fiscal year 36. So that's 12 years for each active and reserve component fighter aircraft. So they have been directed, they being Higher Headquarters Air Force, to come up with a plan to get rid of that question mark that we've been talking about. The CAFR's, Commander of Air Force Reserve's priorities remain the same. It's talking about duty status reform and how that will make it easier to get paid and go on status. He's looking at TRICARE Reserve Select for arts sooner, because right now the transition is to allow that in the 30s. We're talking the 2030s, and it's gonna his initiative is to start it earlier, and then concurrent fielding of follow-on aircraft. So the Guard and Reserve doesn't get what's left over. We need to get new airplanes within our units so that we can help the nation if we're called to, rather than just having the older equipment that perhaps some of the leadership at the higher levels thinks the Guard and Reserve is for. So anyways, that's my Babble Time. A lot of stuff happening in the world that's not necessarily positive. So keep an eye on the news cycle, because our lives could change at any moment. You could wake up in the next morning and there could be conflict in Asia, the Middle East, or Central Europe beyond what it is right now. So now let's go talk to some of our guests. We've got two guests here. We got Colonel Leiter. He's the Deputy Group Commander, otherwise called the Vice Wing Commander, but now it's Deputy Wing Commander. And then we have the Deputy Maintenance Group Commander, Pat Chevalier, Lieutenant Colonel and a Colonel. Obviously, what we're going to talk about and why these two members are with us today is we're going to break out this new, I think it's a benchmark program, and it's called the Deserving Airman Commissioning Board, basically our enlisted to officer program. Kind of identified in the past that this program was not where it needed to be. A lot of random commissioning boards, not properly advertised and not properly available to our pending leaders. And we did one of those CI2 events with Shelley Ecklebe, and she came up with a way ahead that is awesome. Colonel Leiter, I'm going to point to you because you seem to have a little bit more situational awareness about this program and the mentoring program that you're going to run. So why don't you talk about the program in general, and then we'll go to specifically talk to how you two individuals became officers and commanders in our units from the enlisted force.
As Colonel Leonas said, Deserving Airman Commissioning Board, we affectionately called the E-to-O process, enlisted officer process, was developed basically because it's to streamline the way we mentor and promote our deserving airmen, obviously, and gives them a structure to follow on the specific baseline needs to be met prior to reaching a board. And then it also partners that member with a mentor within the 442nd Fighter Wing to kind of help them, guide them through the process and help them get over any hurdles that they may run into, whether that be medical or administrative. So the business rules that were published based out of the CI2 event basically do just that and streamline it and give them a process to follow. It also gives the board members, which is made up of group commanders and also designees from each organization, to sit on this board and follow a set of rules and questions that are pre-selected to then ask those members and then score objectively each individual. That's kind of the process that has come out of the CI2 event, and I think it'll be very beneficial for our organization as a whole in that we have it one time a year, so members and leaders will know when it's going to be. It'll allow potential selectees to prep themselves in a timeline that it's expectation management, right? So they'll be able to know when certain things are due to be able to meet these boards.
Yeah, and to your point, Bob Jennings wrote an article on the new business rules and published it, I think about a month ago. So they're on our 442nd Fighter Wing AF.mil website. And then we'll also roll out an own individual app that we're working with Shelley on through the Connect app that'll help like bridge all of that. So if you're like confused, like where do you find the information? We will probably publish the business rules on our SharePoint, but more information should be available via your cell phones in the near future.
Yeah, and as we look at process improvement and innovation, we're looking to capture upon different media sets to get this information out. So all of this stuff should be transitioning and be available via cell phone device through an Air Force Connect app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. And standardization, business rules, process, and consistency so that everybody understands that, hey, next August there's another commissioning board and you can prepare, and then the mentoring program to help potential candidates get ready and understand what the requirements are to be on the board. So looking forward to breaking this out, and just for I think you're going to put another article out about who
Yes.
has become officers out of this
so
program.
It kind of spurred Colonel Leonas. I think it was your last meeting. They were your first, I guess, meeting as the wing commander. But you just kind of looked around the table and you were talking about this, and you could just see your wheels spinning because you're like, you and Colonel Chevalier and Colonel Yersak and Colonel Leiter.
It was actually overwhelming.
Yes,
when
it was so many of them.
Shallon Troutman was talking about this breakout of this program, and I said, hey, this is huge. Obviously, she is a former squadron commander and came from the enlisted corps, and then I started going around the room, and it was overwhelming. The OSS commander was Ida O, the fighter squadron DO, Ida O, the new LRS commander, Ida O, the deputy wing commander, the maintenance group and deputy group commanders, and the support group commander and deputy commander, all Ida O. It was overwhelming. And then
Kathy Roberts.
Yep, she's the deputy MSG. I included her. Don't even question if I didn't include her. She'd come out of the woodwork and
That was me.
no, absolutely.
And we even have some active duty guys that have done it too. So we're going to kind of encompass them. Roll, he was Intel enlisted,
Intel
right. Officer to A10 pilot. So that'll probably be its own separate story because it's really kind of.
And
a
then
story.
when I started identifying the commanders, the commanders also said, hey, the people in the squadrons are also that program. So this program probably has produced. Let's take the fighter squadron out of the equation because there's obviously a huge population of officers there. But if you look at the non-fighter squadron officers in our unit, I bet you close to 75% are E-to-O, maybe well over 50, but it's somewhere in the range 50 to 75%. So it's a huge program producing great leaders.
And a lot of them have stayed with this unit the entire time.
That's the curse of Whiteman. That's the culture that we have here tends to want people to stay here. So that's awesome. Yeah. But yeah, it's an incredible program. So a couple articles, business rules will be published, and then we'll go hot with our first board in August. I was getting the AA, I almost said April, August. And I don't know how many officer positions we're going to shoot, but it's going to be more than one. It's going to be multiple positions throughout the wing, and we'll pick the best candidates from any unit to fill any unit, and it will be a great thing. I think this will be benchmark for AFRIC. We'll share this to other units, and it will be obviously during the UEI we'll highlight it, and they will see how awesome it is, and it will have executed two cycles, and there's no argument this is full up. So anyways, there's the program. Spread the news. Now we're going to basically talk to some of our success stories. We're starting with you, Chevy.
Great.
Sorry, we're going to go, is this up or down? I don't know which way we're going to go. We're going to talk with you, Chevy. So Lieutenant Colonel Chevalier, the Deputy Maintenance Group Commander, but that's not the first position you held in this unit. Why don't you give us the story of Pat Chevalier?
Sure. So if I begin with the beginning of just my reserve career, I enlisted in '99, August of '99. It was actually a Second Lieutenant Joe Walter that swore me in. Worked for him multiple times in my career. Enlisted in August of '99, went to basic training in January of 2000. I was a civil engineering emergency management specialist, so a CBRNE guy. My role at that time was to prepare bases to respond to disasters, to attacks, and then a home station role was to prepare other deployers by teaching CBRNE and doing some other training. I loved that job. It was a great window into the Air Force. I worked with some great people in the 442nd Civil Engineer Squadron. My first supervisor, Morris Finley. We had outstanding chiefs, outstanding squadron commanders, outstanding first sergeants. It was really, when I think about my growing up in the Air Force Reserve, I think about that squadron often. I had the opportunity to board in the Deserving Airman program in 2006. At that time, the vacancy that was being advertised and filled was the Equal Opportunity Advisor position as a lieutenant. I boarded and was selected for commissioning, went to the Academy of Military Science. Now all of our selectees go to OTS. AMS takes place at McGee Tyson. The reserve no longer sends people there, but it has the OTS curriculum. It is the same training, just different location. So commissioned in 2006, was formally trained as manpower personnel. That was required first as your core before going to EO. Then I went to the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute, the OMI at Patrick Air Force Base, and trained in a total force and joint school to train EO advisors. I was a drilling reservist through all that, came back to the wing, started on wing staff at EO. As manning documents changed, the wing lost their authorization for lieutenant in EO, and I just easily slid to the FSS and worked in education and training as an officer, OIC for education and training for a time. Outside of the reserve, I was working for Department of Homeland Security and Citizenship and Immigration Services on contract oversight work, and then later the Department of Agriculture Farm Service Agency, also in logistics and contract oversight. I really wanted to put my work life in one sock and work full-time for the reserve. So I applied for a couple of opportunities to get into the maintenance group. I grew up around aviation, loved aviation, wanted to be a part of it, and that was my educational background. So I was eventually hired into the group exec position in the maintenance group as an art, and fought my way into being detailed into maintenance officer billet and eventually hired.
Wow.
And served in multiple roles inside the maintenance group, left Whiteman on a couple of occasions on some great...
Let me jump in here real quick. So I mean, here you are one of our core maintenance officers, and you did not come out of the maintenance corps. So
That's right.
What age, just some questions, what age did you join the unit in 99?
In 99, I was 20. I had a little bit of college and was feeling out some opportunities at 20 years old at that time.
Gotcha. And just how did you get recruited? Was it Joe Walters or was it a recruiter?
So I grew up around Civil Air Patrol in Marshall, Missouri. And Civil Air Patrol gave me a window into the Air Force that is incredible. In CAP, I was, I had an opportunity to look for missing people.
Yeah.
No kidding. Look for downed civil aircraft. I participated in a cadet exchange and spent a few weeks in the UK traveling around and observing bases there. So I knew about the Air Force and knew about the reserve. I actually had a reserve member that volunteered as part of Civil Air Patrol that really introduced me. That was Bruce Costner, who was in maintenance at the time in the ECM, and he really introduced me to the 442nd. So I came out, met a recruiter, learned about the jobs that were available. Meanwhile, I was starting college and interested in commissioning from the get-go, but knew that this would be an opportunity for me to get educational benefits, gather some great experience, and just see where it takes me.
And you did 7 years as a enlisted member on a wing. What was the rank that you?
A-firm. I was a pretty new tech sergeant. When I left civil engineering.
Yeah. So this is you're not doing it immediately. You got and what was the when did you get your degree?
Finished undergrad in 2002. Continued at UCM, then CMSU in the aviation program. Did their aviation safety graduate degree and finished that in 2004. Right around the time this wing was mobilizing, it was part of that mobilization from CE. That delayed school a little bit, but incredible experience with OIF, going to different locations than the aviation package.
Yeah.
But incredible time in my life. But finished graduate degree in 2004, and worked out here in a couple of different ways. I was one of those troffers that took every man day I could as an enlisted member. I was a student hire in the FSS while I was going to school as well, and then once I was working full time for other federal agencies, I kept getting pulled. I really wanted to do this full time, and
So I see it didn't, you were eligible for an officer position in 2002.
Correct.
And until 2007, so 5 years from your initial degree to the commissioning board. So you had a long range goal, and you said it multiple times. Hey, I wanted this. So what kept you motivated, and do you ever give up on the opportunity or thought of becoming an officer?
I don't think I gave up on the thought of becoming an officer. I approached college with the idea of going ROTC, and I did intend to go to MU on an ROTC scholarship, but I found that I struggled getting consistent scores in the ACT. I could hit one test that was great, the next test was not. I wasn't hitting the scores to be competitive for an ROTC scholarship. So, it's not an interruption, it's an intersection. I just looked at other opportunities, kept pursuing a way forward. So never did give up on that possibility, but also I'd like to think that I wasn't tied to that as the only possible outcome. And I would say that to officer candidates or people pursuing the commissioning, make sure your ego's not tied to the outcome. If it doesn't pan out for whatever reason, that doesn't mean you can't be a leader in the reserve. We need you. We need leaders, but look for those opportunities to shift your approach if something gets in your way.
Awesome. Okay, sorry. Just had some important questions that were about your, pre-selection before we went to McGee Tyson, and then what MTS you called it?
AMS.
AMS.
Academy of Military Science. There are a few people in the wing that have graduated from there, but really OTS in another place.
Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, I think you left off that you went over into the maintenance group.
Yes, sir. So I was a group exec for Colonel Mike Wood. He knew that I was motivated to do something more than being exec. It's not a place you want to spend your career. He detailed me to learn the flight line, so I worked in AMXS without any formal training, but tried to learn fast, leaned on the senior NCOs, got to know our airmen and what they do, and eventually was able to qualify as an entry-level maintenance officer on the civilian side, and then I could go to formal training. Very quickly on, we were mobilized out of cycle for the 2011-12 deployment. So I was brand new in being formally trained as a maintenance officer, but had the opportunity to deploy to Bagram and Kandahar. There was many things that were complex about that deployment. I was in way over my head, but I tried not to let it get the better of me, and I learned a ton. So deployed then, came back and served as an OPSO in both squadrons, left for a staff position on AGR at Wright Pat, AFMC headquarters, A4 staff, and served on a special project at Wright Pat for 2.5 years, like 2015 to 17. Enjoyed that, gave me a window into AFMC, a monster in this Air Force. It's a totally different Air Force, but so important in what we do. It's so big, and the opportunity to have that view, you can't replicate that. You just have to live it for a little while, and I loved the Dayton area, loved Wright Pat. It was a good experience for our family, but it's tough to balance the family needs with needs of the Air Force and needs of developing your breadth. But that was a really good decision for us to branch out and do something different. I didn't plan to come back to Whiteman. I knew that as a maintenance officer, as an officer, the more we can solve problems at other places with other people and on other things, it just makes us a little deeper. General Borgen gave me a call and asked if I'd consider coming back to Whiteman. There was a vacancy in the AMXS for a while. I put him off for a couple weeks.
Bold man you are.
Right? We had to think deeply about the decision to come back. There's no question about whether we wanted to come back, but we had to consider, okay, where do we go from there? What happens next? But it was right for our family. It was right for us to come back. And I served as the AMXS commander, summer of 2017 to summer of 2019. And I think I skipped over somewhere a deployment in 14.
Yep.
We had a 7-month deployment to Bagram in 14. That was another.
I think we all three of us remember that. Yeah.
Right. Excellent experience. But,
yeah.
So I came back to the wing. Glad to be back to the wing, and that time as the AMXS commander. It was amazing landing somewhere where you know the people, know the mission, know the heartbeat, and had a blast in that role. July of 19 had the chance to go to 10th Air Force headquarters, and I served as the maintenance division chief in 10th Air Force A4. As the maintenance division chief, our job is just to support each maintenance group within 10th Air Force. So fighter, bomber, rescue, those functions that fall into 10th Air Force, the most diverse NAF. Our role is to be smart on what's going on in each of those locations and support them in what they're trying to achieve. While I was at 10th Air Force, COVID occurred, civilian hiring pause occurred. So we had a lot of changes in that time at 10th Air Force, and I ended up being the deputy A4 for a lot of that. We had vacancies across the A4. So I was the only full-time officer among multiple FGO positions, and we pedaled fast and did our best at that time frame. I spent 3 years on 10th Air Force staff and filled a position that had been vacant quite a while at Tinker. That was a deputy commander for maintenance in a classic associate unit. So to frame up that organization, it's aligned to a large active duty air control wing. We have a small reserve footprint there. My role there was to lead the reserve maintainers as part of that association, and learned a lot in that role. It was nice to see an association from a different perspective, as we're active association here. I think it helped me understand a little better, and having that staff experience both at AFMC and 10th Air Force just helped me hit the ground running at a brand new location, big mission, high visibility, reacting to global situations all the time, and I had a blast doing that job. And then I advocated to come back to Whiteman for a family concern. I had been away for a little while. My family stayed placed through much of my time away. We purchased a home in Green Valley, and for medical, educational, family reasons, we elected to keep the family in place there while I was building my reserve experience elsewhere. And I was fortunate that the Reserve Command supported me in coming back, the wing supported me in coming back, and I'm absolutely lucky to be back here as a deputy.
Yeah, your leaders support you based on who you are. Obviously General Morgan supported you coming back here. Did he take you down to 10th too?
Well, he was part of that conversation, right?
And then new General 10th Air Force Commander General Radliff supported you coming up here too. So absolutely. It's the senior leaders that I don't want to say you make look good, but recognize that you are an asset wherever you go. Made sure that you were taken care of, and that's why you're here. And obviously you're in a developmental group commander, deputy group commander position. So they're grooming you to be a group commander somewhere, likely here. But that has not happened yet. So, but yeah. So incredible story, and not the straight line story. It's kind of bouncing around, making it happen, and the reason you're where you're at is because of you and your perseverance and your work ethic. The Midwest values that we talk about in this wing are just shining out of Pat Chevalier right now. So, okay, a couple of questions. Did you like emergency management, EO, the FSS, or maintenance better? Choose one of four.
If I have to choose one of four, I hope I can qualify my answer. I love maintenance.
You obviously did a lot of staff work.
I love maintenance. I love maintainers. My time in other locations in the wing and within the MSG, I have a deep appreciation for what they all do, and I can tell you my time in CE, a civil engineer, a defender, a maintainer, they're not all that different in who they are.
Good answer.
And what they bring.
You're absolutely right. So that's good. Yeah, emergency management is one of those programs that we don't use very often, thank God. But yeah, absolutely, the pros there, and obviously working for Mo Finley, who's is a command level expert in that program. Even though he's back here, he worked at the AFRIC level and was a command level. So I understand the passion that he put into you right off the bat. But the right answer is maintenance, right? No, I'm joking.
That's the right answer.
No, you actually had a very well staffed answer there. That's a joke there. And then the last question is the most important. Did you see any UFOs at Wright-Patterson?
I did not.
UAPs, okay.
I did not.
Yeah, that was a joke, but that's where they all are. All right, Lieutenant Colonel Chevalier, thanks for that telling us how you got here. Great story. Forgive my questions, but some of those details might motivate or trigger someone else out listening to do the same path or a similar path or a random path like you did to get where you're at.
I appreciate you letting me tell the story, and I've told other people this. I really feel like I've gotten a lottery of experiences in the Reserve Command and in this wing, so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Now we're going to move on to Colonel Leiter. I know Colonel Leiter from, I think I met you for the first time when you were going through A10 training. And I was an active duty A10 instructor pilot in Tucson, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. I think I met you there.
Yeah.
In the Dragon Bar.
That is correct.
I don't know if I had made a choice to pursue here. What year was that?
2001.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. I hadn't really made my choice to come up here because I probably started talking about that in 2003. But perhaps that interaction had something to do with me, pursuing getting out of the active duty and such. So that's how I know your story a little bit better than I knew Colonel Chevalier's. But why don't you tell us your different but similar in a way story of how you are here now, the Deputy Wing Commander?
Sure. All right, like you said, asked Colonel Chevalier, who was your recruiter. My recruiter was actually my wife. Going back before that, though, I knew I had a love for flying and wanted to be a pilot when I was about 6 years old. So going up through high school, I didn't really know the right avenues to pursue that. So, and I didn't do that great in high school, honestly. So I elected to go to a community college that had a flight school with it in my home state of Washington State, Big Bend Community College in Moses Lake, Washington. So right out of high school, I went there, started an aviation school there, got my commercial instrument. Spent the first 2 years flying, but also working part-time for my father's advertising agency. And he eventually wanted me to take that over and run his business. I wasn't too sure about that, but I said, okay. Got good enough grades that I got into the University of Washington Business School to learn about how to run a business. And honestly, I got about half a semester in. I had met my fiance at the time, Trina, and I told him, Dad, I've got to fly. I can't take over your business, and I got to find a way to do this. Oh, and by the way, I'm getting married. And my fiance is in the United States Air Force. So a couple big blows to my dad and his plans for me and his business. But so anyway, I elected to kind of go that route. So me and my wife got married. She was an airman at Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri as a med tech in the 509th Medical Squadron. When we got married, we moved from Washington State, took a U-Haul down, moved on base. So I lived on base as a dependent in 1996. Got here in August and joined the 442nd Fighter Wing in September. So I was only here about a month before I looked out on the ramp, saw these beautiful A-10s, and said, I want to fly that. I only had 2 years of college at that point, so I knew I had to finish my 4-year degree. So I started seeking people out that would be able to mentor and help me in that situation. I went to basic training at Lackland and came back as an A-10 crew chief, where I met my supervisor, Buzz Conroy, and the dedicated crew chief for 110, Dave Postma. So those were my initial mentors in the 442nd Fighter Wing, and there is a list of probably 24 people that I could name off that helped grow me to assume my aspirations of becoming a pilot. At the same time, I needed to get my 4-year degree, so I also went to UCM to their aviation school. I went the aviation management versus the safety route, but ended up finishing in just under about 2 years there, coming up on the Deserving Airman Commissioning Board, but for the aviation side in, I believe it was March of 1999. I was supposed to graduate in May of 1999, so I knew there was some work to be done. So I had to get done with school by December of 98. So to do that, I had to take 28 semester hours in my last semester to get done with college in time to meet the board. So I was going to school from 8 in the morning till 8 at night to get done in time. I still managed to only get, I think, 1 C, the rest were A's and B's, so it wasn't too bad. I did a lot better at academics in college than I definitely did in high school. But anyway, so I was able to graduate early and get my package put together, really with all the help was done through Carol Tripp, who used to be our superintendent in the 303rd Fighter Squadron. Couldn't have done it without her. I also had a mentor in James Lavelle, who was a newly hired lieutenant into the squadron, who had basically just come through my path. He was an F-16 and an F-4 crew chief at a different unit, but kind of followed that same trail and got hired just prior to me into the 303rd Fighter Squadron. So that's my story throughout there. I don't want to gloss over my time as a maintainer because that meant the world to me. Second best job in the world I've ever had in my life was being an A-10 maintainer. But that's kind of my road from kind of my desire to fly to getting my commission. There's a lot of, again, mentorship and help along the way, specifically through the maintenance leadership channels. Like Buzz Conroy would put me up. I don't think I was necessarily the best young crew chief out there, but he would put me up as best junior crew chief of the quarter or of the year, and then he eventually put me up for an AFRC level award, the Lieutenant General Leo Marquez Junior Maintenance Enlisted Member of the Year, which I ended up winning, which also helped build my resume for this application to becoming a pilot in the 303rd Fighter Squadron.
Wow. So your path was a little bit quicker from boots on ground at Whiteman 1 month before you joined our unit. Is that correct?
That is correct. So I met my wife 3 weeks before she left for basic training in Washington State. And so we had a long distance relationship. So we kind of got to know each other on the phone and went the 2 or 3 times we visited prior to actually getting married a year later. And then as soon as we got married and I moved down here, I got here and just kind of had an aha moment looking at that A-10, went straight to the recruiter, signed the papers, and a month later I was going to basic training.
So one thing that you did that is pretty common is you became a crew chief. And just so everybody understands, Colonel Leiter went through a different commissioning source. He went through the pilot training board that the fighter squadron holds, which is a little bit different than our program that we broke out and talked about today. But it's still an opportunity that anyone has available. And I think you said something, a couple things that I thought were I had to find a way to do this. Dad, I wanted to fly. I have to find a way to do this. And I see that as a indicator of why you made these steps. A month later, you joined our unit. How did you know, or what motivated you to sign up to be a crew chief?
A lot of that was help from the recruiter, but also just knowing that I needed to be around aviation, and I thought being a crew chief and getting the background knowledge of knowing the nuts and bolts of the actual aircraft I really wanted to fly would pay huge dividends in the future when I went to try to apply to become a pilot for that.
Plus you had probably 200 hours plus.
I did.
Flying.
I had about 200 hours. I had my commercial instrument at the time.
So you were aware of the aviation, I guess you could say, scene.
That is correct.
Civilian. So that's something. I'm trying to think of how many pilots in our unit over the years were actually crew chiefs. Colonel or Major Barry, Juicy Barry, he was a crew chief.
Lieutenant Colonel retired Sims.
Mm-hmm. He was a crew chief.
Chevy?
She was a crew chief.
Chevy was, yeah.
Yep. She obviously became commissioned in the active duty, but she was a crew chief.
The late Jim Lavelle.
Mm-hmm. That's something that I don't want to say it's necessary. You can be any career field in our unit and be welcomed by the fighter squadron and their pilot training board, and that gets advertised separately, and it's based on the need of the pilot force. It's not going to be an annual requirement. I know a lot of people have joined Intel, and that was, you're in the fighter squadron. There's obviously, it's on-the-job training. That can burn you too. We have many people that joined Intel and eliminated themselves from an opportunity to become a pilot. AFE is another one. That would be a good AFSC if you're listening to get in the ops group.
Yeah. Weapons loader. Lieutenant Colonel Sadler was a weapons loader.
Absolutely. So, and this is not unique to just our unit. There are many other units that pull pilots from the unit enlisted corps, and I would say I bet you the majority of them come out of maintenance, or the highest percentage come out of maintenance for sure. So that's something to think about. So kind of a separate commissioning process. He was selected to be a pilot in the squadron. And what are some baseline qualifications that were required before they even let you in the door to interview for that position?
So yeah, in the Air Force Reserve, I would say the preponderance of units require a private pilot's license. So what that equates to, it's about 50 hours of flying on the civilian side to get your private pilot's license. Additionally, you have to take the AFOQT and score. There's certain score requirements, I would say, in each of the specific skill areas that you have to hit at baseline, basically, to be considered. You also have to do a first-class flight physical, and also I think it's still called a TBAS score, but it's basically a hand-eye coordination skills test to make sure that you have the right dexterity and
It's a hand-eye
aptitude
coordination thing, yeah.
to be able to fly an airplane, basically. And that's a score. They actually do wrap all those tests kind of in one and give you a composite score, but then you can also break those out and look at them individually during the application process.
Yeah, and I recall I've been involved in some of these hiring boards. We actually look at people's, we'll call them the overall profile. There's people that come in with a 4.0 GPA and they don't get invited to the board, and there's people that come in with a less than a 4.0 GPA. So we kind of look at the whole picture. Another thing that helps is if the squadron knows who you are.
Absolutely.
So that's where, if you're on the flight line, that interview is occurring at every launch. But if you're in the unit, there's instances where you can come to the squadron and talk to the pilots, which it's an intimidating building to walk into if you don't know someone. So the best way to do it is get to me or Colonel Leiter, and we'll bring you into the building if you don't have a connection, and we'll bring you up there and make sure you get introduced to the right people. Which are the pilots, and believe it or not, they're human, and they want you there.
And they are definitely approachable. You just need to go up to any of them and to say, hey, how did you guys do this? How can I do this? And they'll be more than happy to take time out of their day. I had someone reach out to me, actually Russell Roberts reached out to me about an individual over in maintenance that was interested, and I said, make time this weekend. I'll take 15 minutes and kind of walk them through process and how to do that. And
Absolutely.
We all need mentors to grow in our career here in the Air Force, and it won't happen unless you seek them out. But more than not, if you ask somebody, they're going to be more than happy to take you down the road of accomplishing your goals.
Yep, absolutely. And it's, I'd say, all of the leadership's responsibility, if there's an individual that's interested, to get them to someone who will get them on the right track. Whether it's me, whether it's another pilot, that's our jobs, to mentor. And that's a difficult hill to climb sometimes unless you have a little bit of help. And I'll help you. I know Colonel Leiter will, but any officer, any senior enlisted should help. And you obviously had mentors in the APG shop that got you in the right direction. Submitting you from awards, which of course you humbly say you're not the best, but you're getting nominated. I don't believe that and such. So that's great. Another name I'm going to throw out there is Mr. Mike Bumpus. He's our simulator instructor, and he's the one that kind of holds the knowledge base of how to become a pilot in general, which includes our squadron, but it also includes other programs out there, because Air Force Reserve Command has we'll call it the Central Hiring Board for pilots. And to be honest, our squadron is very competitive, extremely competitive. Many reasons why, and the Air Force Reserve Central Hiring Board is not quite as competitive. Obviously, the minimums are the minimums, but there's opportunity there as well. So awesome. All right, Shelley, what are we missing? That was some 2 awesome stories.
Yeah, 2 awesome stories. And, as we go forward, we'll kind of bring other people in and tell their stories too. And, it's encouraging, whether it's us teaching lessons in Wright Flight about the Wright brothers who achieved incredible things for not having, a college diploma, to your guys' stories. I think it's important to realize, the road's not linear to whatever goal you're wanting. It's not linear. And I appreciate your guys' transparency, because you don't have to be the smartest, you don't have to be the fastest, you don't have to be the best. But, whether you're looking at famous people in our history or your guys' stories, I think, consistent themes of tenacity, work ethic, asking the right questions, not pigeonholing yourself to a specific end state is just really important. So I think it's cool, because it's hard to be what you can't see. And so I think it's cool to always have mentors and people that you look up to that may have had the same struggles or the same adversity. So thank you. They're encouraging to me, and I hope that, airmen find it encouraging as well. Whether it's they continue on and be the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force or become an officer or commander one day, I think it's all good things. So
Awesome. Thanks for leading, guys.
yeah.
I appreciate it. You too, Shelley. Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. We're good.
Say 2.